We'll give people another minute or two here to log on as they're coming in from different places. Take a moment though, and I'll show this in a second on the screen, but take a moment, familiarize yourself with Teams if you haven't used it a ton. You're going to see a chat feature on the top, as well as a raise hand feature, your camera, your mic option. It will have you unmuted as you come in, so just mute yourself if you don't mind. But you have the option to ask questions later on. So. All right, so it's about almost 9:02 here, so I'm going to go ahead and get started as people joining us. We'll kind of catch them up. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us here today, and this is our first community of practice directly related to our Stronger Connections grant. We have 3 of them this year, and then hopefully use your feedback and build 3 or 4 for next school year as well. So we have an opportunity to really grow together here over the next couple months here. So I'm Eric Blazing. I'm the Stronger Connections consultant here on the SSPW team. Christine Anderson is the assistant director on our team, and she's on the call with us today for a little bit as well. And then Susan Piazza is our director on the SSPW team. And so the SSPW team, if you're not real familiar with it, houses our school counseling, our mental health, our school psychologists, school nurse consultants, as well as many other roles and many other grant fundings, primarily focused around that student health and safe and healthy schools approach. So as you come in, it is being recorded, so do know that if you have to hop off, you feel, you're more than welcome to come and go as you need to based on the meetings or things that are happening within your building. It is being recorded. Once the session is done, I send it over to our communications team. They do closed captioning for us to make it accessible, and then we'll put it on the website. So it might take a few days to get up on the website, but we will get it posted there. Do double check your mic, that it's muted as you come in, especially if you leave and come back, double check that mic. We will have an open opportunity at the end for questions and discussion around different things with the grant, but also feel free to raise your hand, use the chat feature throughout the meeting if you have questions as things come up. And objectives for today is that you're going to have an opportunity to connect with some of the peers that are within this grant program. We have 40 LEAs throughout the state, spread fairly evenly geographically throughout the state. We have a goal of knowing the components of the Wisconsin Mental Health Framework, know where to find those school mental health resources, and then at the end have an opportunity to ask questions of other grantees. Our agenda for today, we'll start out with some brief introductions and a short connection activity. We'll share, I want this to be content focused and not just based on the grant allowables, but I have just like 2-3 quick things to share about grant information just while we're all together, but I will keep that very brief. Then we're going to spend some time with Kristen and Libby as they talk about school mental health and the school mental health framework here for the state of Wisconsin. Christine from Mukwonago is going to hop on and share a little bit about the work that they're doing down there in their school district. And then we'll have some time at the end, whatever time is left at the end, for just open questions, resource sharing, ideas amongst each other. So for the connection activity, if I could have you participate, that would be great. If you aren't in a spot where you can or don't feel comfortable to, I'm just getting over a cold myself, so I may pause and cough a little bit. Feel free to use the chat, but if possible, we'd love to have you share, over verbally, so that we get a chance to put faces to names and get to connect with you a little bit more personable this morning. So if you could go ahead and raise your hand on Teams. That's going to number everybody, and then it'll kind of help me facilitate who's next and kind of remove some of the virtual pause that makes it a little bit more difficult to navigate some of these things sometimes. And so just real briefly, as I call on you, please share your name, the school district that you're working with, your role within the grant, and the best part of your school year so far. And so as I mentioned, I'm Eric Blazing. I'm with the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. Prior to my role here, I was a high school social studies teacher and elementary principal, the grant consultant on this grant. And my son is a new 4Ker. So we're 6 weeks into to 4K, and we have all day 4K in our district. And so, and he's at the building that my wife teaches at as well. So that's been the best part, is hearing about his excitement for that. So I have Christine next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Christine Bowden. I am the Director of Student Services in Mukwonago. My role is overseeing the grant and then also being part of the process for writing and then rolling it out. Best part of the school year so far, professionally, is that we opened our own building for our alternative program. And so in the past, we've rented from different facilities, but we finally have a permanent home. And so that has been very exciting for us.
Great, that's awesome. Heidi.
Hi, my name is Heidi Horton. I am the Director of Pupil Services in the West Salem School District. And my role with the grant was helping to write it and also oversee it, and working with our new school social worker, who is a part of our grant, and also part of my best part of the school year thus far. We haven't had a school social worker in over 16 years. And so we've been amazed with what this person has been able to do with our mental health programming and our systems thus far.
That's phenomenal. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And then once you're done too, just drop your hand up there in the screen. Rachel.
Hi, Rachel McNally. I'm with the Siren School District, which is a very small rural district up in Northwest Wisconsin, right around 400 students total, K-12. I did help write the grant. I am also overseeing it. My role is grant coordinator. And then I moved from a school counselor role into what we're calling a student success coordinator for the duration of this grant. And the best part so far has been, as part of the grant, we're rolling out restorative practices, and we trained about half of our staff. We had 2 full-day trainings, one before school started and one last Friday. And the enthusiasm and support for that has far exceeded what we expected. So I'm excited to see how that works throughout the next 2 years.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Yerk. I'm with La Casa de Esperanza, which is a charter school in Waukesha. I'm the school counselor. New this year, brand new. The school counselor is brand new to the school. So my role with the grant is at this point unknown for me. I'm still trying to figure it all out. But the best part of the school year is just getting to know all of the kids and really hearing all their stories. It's been amazing.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Let's see. Morgan, am I saying that right? Oh, I can't. You might be muted. I can't hear you there. I can't. Could be Teams sometimes. It might not link up to your microphone. You may have to change it in the settings. I can't hear you. I'm going to go on to Brianna and let you look at it, and we'll try to catch you hopefully at the end. Brianna.
Yeah, I'm Brianna Falk. I am in a new position with the Appleton Area School District for a student success specialist. I have experience working in clinical mental health counseling, but this role specifically focuses on AODA and substance use at the middle school level. So I'm not 100% sure what my anticipated role with the grant is, but I was asked to be here and learn more. And the best part of school is so far is just being new to school life in general. I come from, like I said, more of an inpatient, outpatient setting. So it's cool to get to work with the kiddos every day and learn more about how this role can better serve our students.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Missy.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I am Missy Lessick, and I serve as the Director of Student Services and Special Education in the School District of Altoona. My role with the grant, I am the grant coordinator. And best part of the school year so far, we engaged in a core program review process for our SEL curriculum and resources. And this year we launched a 4K through 12 SEL instruction program with the assistance of Character Strong is really our resource. And staff all the way up through secondary are really excited about it and implementing that. And that has gone well for us thus far. So that's our celebration.
Awesome. Kathy.
I'm Kathy Rogers. I'm the Director of Student Services for the New Richmond School District. I am the grant coordinator for our district. Best part of this year so far has actually been the activities we've been able to work on due to the grant. And Morgan, if he does not come back on, is our grant facilitator. And he has been working on all of the initiatives. Part of the reason my year is going well is because he's grabbing it all and running.
That's great. That's great. Morgan, I see you're back on. Is your mic okay? Does it work?
Can you hear me now?
I can, yeah.
Hey, cool. All right, so my name is Morgan Villa. I am with the School District of New Richmond. Role within the grant, I am kind of district-wide, working in prevention and intervention and everything that may relate to. Primarily thus far, it has been with more of the at-risk population and then also with truancy, and inevitably will be toward AODA prevention as well. And then the best part of the school year so far, I would say, again, has been just learning the ins and outs. My history as a school counselor has definitely prepared me for a lot of this work. And then moving forward, just trying to get a lot of the things district-wide that the school district hasn't encountered or done yet, and working toward providing more opportunities and more resources for the students of this area.
Great, thank you for sharing. And so a couple people in the chat there to just check out. We have Melanie from Milton Cross Plains. Big positive shifts in their multi-layered system support is her best part of the school year. Kyler from Shawano is working. His best part is working, or her best part, working more closely with our student service teams in the district. And so great to have you there. If anybody else that I missed wants to share, it'd be a great time. Otherwise, the chat's always available. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing. And so just again, I want to make this content focused. I'm not going to try to take time during these, but just a couple things, just as a reminder, since we're kind of still starting out the year, the new school year. So for WISE grants, for those of you that deal with WISE grants, the budget will remain in 23-24. So if you've done anything with ESSER, it's very similar to that. It's going to stay within that 23-24 year in WISE grants. You're going to have to navigate backwards to that. The budget lines, if you can, it's unlimited in terms of budget revisions that you can put in. So any number of revisions that you need to make throughout the process is fine. So we aren't approving and really not able to approve those to be determined lines. So if you're not quite sure on the curriculum or the vendor yet or the staff member, it's okay to leave those off until you do have that information. Minor remodeling, if you have anything like that, which would be security camera upgrades, security upgrades, anything like that, playground stuff, $2,000, any project over $2,000, including installation and materials, adhere to the Davis-Bacon Acts if you want to know more. I can give you more information later on that. And then the funds must be encumbered by September 30th of 2026. So just under 2 years, 2 full school years left. Inclusive of the tidings period, which means that there's no additional carryover of time with those grants. If it's a person, they have to be, you can count their time up through September 30th, or materials need to be purchased by September 30th. And then quarterly claiming is our best practice recommendation from the agency. Equitable participation, for those of you that do have private schools, just a quick reminder, those funds available to the private schools are independent of your plan. It has to be allowable things within the grant, so they can't do something that's not allowable in the grant, but they also don't have to do the same thing that you are doing. They can certainly participate in it, and we love a lot of collaboration that I'm seeing has been great, that where the trainings and the resources are being shared between the private schools and the public schools. I mean, that's best for all kids involved. But they don't have to. Any purchases that are made, whether it's a vendor or physical actual items. The LEA is the fiscal agent, so you're purchasing those items on behalf of the private school. They can't seek reimbursement from you. And then indirect costs, you can claim indirect costs because we know that equitable participation, the WISE grant budgeting, the claiming, all that takes time. You are able to take indirect costs to cover that time and effort from your staff and other, supplies and needs within the district. But since it's over multiple years, the indirect rate does change each year that you're able to claim. The WISE grants team did a really nice job of making this nifty tweak in the budget to allow you to see the different years and the different percentages for indirect costs. And so I'm going to share out more information specifically on that to everyone who's dealing with the WISE grants and on my contact list. So that'll be coming out just to let you know that that is available. And then this is a new resource. So as part of a competitive grant, as part of a district that's working with federal funds, you are required to follow the submitted SMART goals and action plans and budget narrative, especially since it was based on competitive application, because that's how you were awarded the funds. But we also understand that things change. Your data-driven decisions based on your continuous improvement planning may change some of the needs that you have in your district. Issues of circumstance. So you planned on hiring a school counselor and you have had no applications because we all are living in the world of trying to hire people in public education, right? And so if those things happen, that's okay to make changes and we can have a conversation about that. So feel free to shoot me an email, book me a message, or book me a meeting. If you are ready to make those changes, there's a program form there. If you click on it, it's going to take you to a form. Bookmark that link would be a good thing to just kind of have in your folder. And so any program changes, we're going to submit through that form. It just makes it uniform. Previously, I'd asked people to email me, but now this makes it more uniform for you, more uniform for me, and just a little bit easier to get to. So that's all I got there. I'm going to turn it over now here to Kristen and Libby, and they're going to talk a lot about school mental health. We're super excited to have them. They're both members of our SSPW team, and we're very fortunate they're sharing their time with us today.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. Excited to be here with you all and share this time and space. As Eric mentioned, we'll talk a lot about school mental health and our mental health framework for Wisconsin. Before we introduce ourselves, we do have our agenda on the next slide, just to give you an overview of what we'll be discussing today. So today's conversation, we'll have an overview of comprehensive school mental health systems, or CSMH, because we love acronyms. We'll also discuss mindsets behind mental health, the components of the framework itself, and then a variety of resources that we feel will be useful to you all within your individual districts. All right, and then thank you all for introducing yourselves. Libby and I will introduce ourselves as well. My name is Kristen Jones. I am a school mental health consultant here with DPI on our SSPW team. Here on the team, I feel like I do a little bit of everything, as I'm sure we all do. I focus a little bit more so on social emotional learning, compassion, resilience, or educator wellness. I work alongside Libby with TSS, SBIRT, and then various other topics related to mental health in schools. Prior to joining DPI, I did work as a school psychologist with Milwaukee Public Schools with a focus on equity and mental health promotion. Libby, I will pass it to you. And then Eric, we see your screen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you today. So my name is Libby Strunz. I am also a school mental health consultant and work alongside Eric and Kristen on the Student Services Prevention and Wellness team. So one specific area related to comprehensive school mental health that Kristen and I lead is the Get Kids Ahead initiative. So I see some familiar faces and names on the call today. I know I've exchanged emails with many of you about those Get Kids Ahead funds. So I also lead our work related to trauma-sensitive schools and bullying prevention. And prior to starting at DPI, about 2 years ago now, I was a middle school counselor, and before that I was a high school teacher. So I've been in the K-12 world for a while, and I'm always happy to connect with folks who are in that K-12 world to support the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Libby. All right, so to get us started here, you may be wondering if you're on this call, what is a comprehensive school mental health system? You may be familiar with it. We know that you're all coming in with different understandings. of what this is. But when we talk about a comprehensive school mental health system, we're really referring to the wide range of supports that promote a positive school climate and environment, while also promoting social emotional learning, mental health and well-being of both our staff and students, which then reduces the prevalence and severity of mental health challenges. When we think of comprehensive school mental health systems, we're thinking of a strong foundation of both our school professionals and then strategic partnerships with both our students, our families, and then community health and mental health partners as well. So to get us started here, we do have a video of some other administrators and leaders in the field just on why school mental health matters, which I think gives a really good view and perspective on their experience with school mental health and the things that they're doing. So we will share this with you briefly.
I'm gonna play it, so just let me know if you're having any volume issues.
Yep. I don't think the volume's coming through.
Okay, that was my worry.
It may be, you may have to exit out and share again, and then when you share, include audio. I think Teams doesn't include that when you share.
Okay, let me see here. Let's see. I don't know if I fixed it.
No.
Still no, huh?
No.
Okay, give me 1 second here. Oh, okay. I see. Possibly. I maybe found the fix here.
I do this work because over the course of my career, I have seen inequitable outcomes for students who are impacted by things outside of their control. And mental health and wellness is one of the areas that I know that we can make an impact on in partnership with community agencies, parents and caregivers, and with school staff.
School mental health is important for students because it really looks at the whole child approach. So while we have our academic learning happening, our social emotional skill development needs to be happening at the same time.
In life in general, relationships matter. We really focus on building those relationships with kids because we can really see them develop.
How do we look at a systems level to really be able to capture all of the needs that we have in our district? As a counselor with a case ratio of 1 to about 400, I see day in, day out how many needs we have, and I feel like it's important to help work on those systems and being able to really capture the needs of students.
We understand that mental health is important and mental wellness is important for all of our students and families who come through our school district. From early childhood through the age of 21, the impact of things outside of school and how that manifests in school is something that we take really seriously. So if a student is not coming in mentally well, or their social emotional wellness is not in such a place that they can access education, that is where our entry point is.
As school mental health professionals, we can stop the cycles and end the barriers by collaborating with families and caregivers and by building those relationships with those students.
We need to not only be aware of the mental health concerns that they might have, we also need to understand what those barriers are and be able to address them in a wide variety of ways.
Kids come in with extremely different backgrounds and trauma histories, and how one student might react to a situation is going to look different than to another student.
We start first at the universal level and really think about wellness around all aspects of a student's health.
If we can help them cope and help them feel like school's a safe place, we're going to find a lot more benefit from the kids. We're going to take those barriers out of the way.
Positive school climate and culture for staff and students. So feeling pride in your school, feeling belonging in your school, and feeling like you have a say in how things are going usually helps them feel more connected to the school and the community. I'm most effective with students when they feel accepted in a space with me. They feel like their identity is appreciated. They feel comfortable and safe and are held to high expectations because they know that they can be great if you let them know that they can be great, and that goes a long way.
I've seen the benefit and the impact that school-based mental health services across the continuum of supports can have on students, with the primary goal of being able to access their education and learn so that they can achieve their life goals after leaving us and leaving the public school system.
It's not just investing in students, it's really investing in the whole community.
Right. So as you saw in that video, addressing mental health in schools isn't just about responding to crises, but instead it's about creating environments that are proactively supporting the well-being of our students and staff. And when we invest in our mental health systems, we build stronger foundations for learning and community, which is really what we're talking about here when we think of the comprehensive school mental health framework. So this visual here includes all of the components of the school mental health framework, including the continuum of mental health supports, collaboration, needs assessment and resource mapping, mental health referral pathways, sustainability, and data. It is okay if you don't know what all those include right now. Libby will be sharing a little bit more detail about each of these components and resources related to each of them that may be useful to you all. And then in these slides as well, there is a link to the guide in case you want to go and research that later, and look at some more information that is on this slide here. So one thing when we talk about mental health, sometimes we see mental health in schools as an individual student problem. But really what we're wanting to shift to is that this is a comprehensive look at our systems instead. So one thing you may hear in schools may be on the left saying mental health is an individual student problem that takes time and resources to address. But when we start focusing on our systems, we'll hear in our schools something more along the lines of mental health is an asset for students, families, schools, and communities, and investing in CSMHS leads to a stronger, healthier, more equitable community. Again, on the left side, you may hear something in the schools like having conversation about mental health with students is only the job of student services staff. But really, when we start focusing on our systems, we'll shift our focus to something more along the lines of everyone understands and is committed to their role in promoting well-being in the school community and are supported in playing that role. And then here, you may hear we have to implement piecemeal programs as a reaction to individual student problems, rather than hearing we use a framework to engage in continuous improvement to build a comprehensive integrated system. So just as a moment of reflection, this is something that you can keep to yourselves. Typically we'd have some time here to do some small groups to have a conversation around this, but just be thinking to yourself as you hear those things, is there knowledge that needs to be gained within your district related to mental health? Are there beliefs that need to shift, practices that need to change in order to shift from potentially being more of a individual basis versus system? Just something to keep in mind as we continue our conversation here about mental health as it relates to your own school district. All right, and then I'm going to pass it over to Libby to talk a little bit about each of our components.
All right, good morning, everyone. So what we're going to do next is an exploration of each of the components of our comprehensive school mental health framework with related resources for each. So as I was selecting these resources, the frame I often use is What resources did I find really helpful as a school counselor when I was engaging in school mental health work? Or what resources did I not know about or did not exist at that time that I really wish I had known about? So our goal today is for you to walk away not with a completely comprehensive understanding of this framework, but an introduction to the framework and its components, and a variety of resources that you can use as you continue your journey in the fantastic work that you're already doing. I'm glad that I was able to hear your introductions this morning and hear the fantastic work that so many of your districts are already embarking on as part of their school mental health journey. So our first component that we're going to zoom in on today is the continuum of supports. So just like we have a multi-level system of supports for academics through response to intervention or behavior through PBIS, our school mental health system also has a multi-level system of supports that ensures that our students and staff, no matter what their mental health needs are receiving the supports that they need. So that first level of supports are universal tier 1 services we refer to as mental health promotion. So this might be what many of you were speaking to, adopting a K-12 universal social emotional learning curriculum. Doing activities that promote mental health literacy, whether that's through peer-led clubs or lessons that are embedded into advisory time or your health class. Doing activities related to staff wellness and compassion resilience. Embedding mental health activities into existing PBIS systems. So anything that helps to support the wellness of all students and staff, it's universal, it's preventative. The strong foundation, like in our other tiered systems of support, we know is really important. So next we have our early intervention mental health services. So these are our services that are at the tier 2 level, designed for students that might have emerging mental health needs. So this might be small group supports with your school counselor or social worker or psych. It might be mentoring either with a peer or an adult at the school. It might be a daily check-in or a check-in, check-out procedure that students are using. And then finally, we have our tier 3 services for our students with more significant mental health challenges. So this is divided into 2 groups, our treatment services and our crisis response. So treatment might be services through school-based mental health or community providers. So that could be individual, group, or family therapy. It could be working with your county folks to help ensure that students have wraparound services if they're accessing services from a variety of different systems. And then it can also be crisis response work. So doing suicide assessments and crisis support plans to help support students that are in a crisis situation. So this entire continuum of supports, again, supports our students and our staff that have a variety of mental health needs. So a couple of resources that I wanted to spotlight for you related to the continuum of supports. We could really spend the rest of our time together just talking about resources that are part of the continuum of supports. We have a lot of fantastic things on our DPI website and through our partners. But a couple that I wanted to spotlight is, first of all, I'm going to actually go from right to left here, our new suicide prevention curriculum. And Eric, if you wouldn't mind clicking on that link just so folks can see the website where that lives. So our new suicide prevention curriculum, you can see it's actually 3 different sets of curriculum. So there is an elementary, a middle school, and a high school version. And the goal behind that is that each of these talks about suicide and helps students to develop skills related to recognizing mental health challenges in themselves and others, providing support, help seeking from trusted adults in a way that's developmentally appropriate. So for example, the elementary curriculum, there really is not a strong focus on suicide specifically. It's more about building mental health literacy and reducing stigma and connecting with trusted adults when they or a peer might be struggling. So this is a new curriculum. It was just launched this year. There have been a variety of trainings and introductions that we've done with this curriculum throughout the state. You don't need any sort of training. You're not required to attend a workshop in order to use these lessons. And I think one of the strongest features of these suicide prevention lessons, which are free, like all of our DPI resources, is that they're laid out in a way that's really easy for educators to use. So there's clear lesson objectives, there's built-in student activities and projects, there's scripts for the teacher or facilitator to read. So I think you'll find that if you dive into these, they are very user-friendly, something that a school counselor, a health teacher, or another educator who receives support could deliver to students. All right, and another resource I wanted to share today, because I know in the questions and comments that were submitted ahead of time, one of the questions was about resources for supporting students at the Tier 3 level. So students who have been identified as having some of those more intensive mental health needs. And one resource that is great for that is our collaboration guide for schools and community mental health providers. So one common way that schools are working to meet the needs of students who have been identified as being in need of Tier 3 services is utilizing school-based mental health. So partnering with community providers, licensed mental health clinicians to provide school-based mental health services. And so this is a guide that was created by DPI and a variety of partner organizations through the Coalition for Expanding School-Based Mental Health in Wisconsin. And it's a guide that provides information about best practices for sustainably partnering with community partners in order to provide school-based mental health services for students. So another great resource that focuses more at the Tier 3 level. All right, so our next component is collaboration. So this is something that Kristen spoke to a little bit earlier, that when we talk about collaboration in school mental health, we have a couple key ideas here. One is that schools cannot do this work alone. So it's really important that we have community partnerships. And I know that many of you here today are from smaller rural school districts, which is my background as an educator. And we know that sometimes in our smaller rural districts, we have higher ratios of community mental health providers to folks living in the community. We know that sometimes we don't have as many options for community mental health providers. So when we're talking about community partnerships, I encourage folks to really think creatively and expansively about that. So for example, when I was a school counselor, one of the closest community partnerships I had was with our local sexual assault recovery and prevention center. So they provided services to our students for free related to prevention. So they came in and delivered lessons to our health classes about healthy relationships, about consent, about habits for wellness. And they also helped us to facilitate and co-facilitate small groups. Another one of our great partners was a local domestic violence organization who had several bilingual advocates that volunteered in our schools to help us co-facilitate groups for our Spanish-speaking students that, again, weren't even specifically connected to domestic violence, but covered a wide variety of prevention topics and topics for health and wellness. So when we talk about community partnerships, a lot of times we often think of mental health providers, and those are important partnerships, but there's lots of community organizations and groups out there that might be able to be partnerships as well. So when we talk about collaboration, we're talking about community partnerships. We're talking about involving students and families and centering their voices and experiences and thinking about authentic ways for them to be involved in our school mental health process. And then we're also talking about the fact that it's really important that we don't have an attitude that school mental health is just the job of our student services professionals. So I know there's lots of student services professionals on the call today, and I'm preaching to the choir here. So our student services directors, our wellness specialists, our counselors, our psychs, our social workers, you may be leaders in this process because you have the training and expertise to do that, but it's so important that we have the mindset that everyone who works with students supports student wellness in a way that's appropriate for their role. And it doesn't mean that we're asking teachers to be therapists or mental health experts, but it means that everybody who works with kids is committed to promoting social and emotional wellness, and that we have multidisciplinary teams that help to support our school mental health work, that it's not living in the hands of just a couple of people in the district. So one great resource that I am excited to share with you today is our equity mindset cards. And these were actually developed at DPI by our coaching folks. And the equity mindset cards are cards that the goal is to help support systems change in a way that supports equity. So there are, I believe, 12 different cards, and each one has a key mindset for equity. And it has discussion questions or reflection questions to ask about. It has action steps. It has common pitfalls. So one way to use these cards would be in a mental health team meeting, especially when a change process is being discussed, like developing or adopting a new curriculum, considering a resource map or a referral pathway for how students access mental health services. You can use these cards to guide that conversation and help to make sure that different perspectives are being considered. All right, next is needs assessment and resource mapping. So these are two complementary processes that really help to inform our school mental health work. So if you are early in your school mental health journey, lots of times folks, when they reach out, ask me, Libby, we're early in our school mental health journey. We have some things in place. We're doing some social emotional learning. We are partnering with a therapist who comes into school one day a week to provide mental health services to our students. We've got some good things in place. Where do we go next? And although that answer is different for every school and depends on your data and your needs, lots of times if folks are early in their journey and are wondering what a good next step would be, I often share with them some information about needs assessment and resource mapping, because it's a really great way to help to identify what are some of the strengths of your system, what are the gaps, and what are the areas of focus moving forward. So when we do a needs assessment, we can do a needs assessment of students, of staff, of families, of community members, and it can really help us to identify what are things that we're doing well, what are the needs of the folks that we're serving, and how do we bridge where we are to where we want to be. So when we do a needs assessment, this can also be a really great way to start community conversations about school mental health. So I know that was one of the questions that was submitted ahead of time too. How do we start to have these conversations in our community? So doing a needs assessment can be one way to do that. So a needs assessment can look like a survey that's sent out. A needs assessment can also look like community town hall events or parent information nights, where maybe you share some local data, YRBS, Youth Risk Behavior Survey data related to school mental health. And then you also ask folks who are in attendance to share information about the mental health needs that they're seeing in their family, in their community, amongst their students. And then our process of resource mapping, essentially what we're doing, we can do this internally and externally. So essentially we're identifying, we're visually representing and sharing information about both our internal and our external supports and services. And again, the resource mapping process can be a really great way to start community conversations about school mental health, because you're engaging some of these different community partners. So when we make a school mental health resource map, a great spot to start is internal mental health services. And then as you have the capacity, working to expand that externally. So maybe making a resource map of mental health providers in your community, but also expanding that to things like resources for food and housing, information about public libraries, rec departments, the YMCA, some of these different community groups that help to support students and families' wellness as a broader scope. So, resource to share for this, that if this sounds intriguing to you, but you're like, where do I start? We do have a resource mapping checklist. So it shares some information about what are some different internal and external supports that you might consider putting on a school mental health resource map. And it has some things on there to, again, encourage people to think expansively and creatively. So for example, in a school mental health resource map, we're going to want to include information about how to access supports from, say, your school counselor. But another really great thing to include can be a list of student clubs and activities with meeting dates and times and the name and contact information for the advisor, because we know that there's a strong correlation between student participation in school activities and an increased sense of school belonging, as well as positive mental health outcomes. All right, so our next component is mental health referral pathways. So when we talk about mental health referral pathways, we are talking about our formalized processes and procedures to ensure that our students who might have emerging or established mental health needs are identified, referred, assessed, and connected to the appropriate resources and services. So this helps us to identify students' needs across this entire continuum of support. And another key part of this component is screening. So it's something I could talk about for a while, but I'll just say really briefly that when we use screeners, including universal screeners, to help identify students that might have social, emotional, or mental health needs or challenges, it can really help us to make sure that we are referring students for services equitably and mitigating bias and identifying students. So, for example, if we have a student who is struggling with a mental health concern and that mental health concern is manifesting in really externalizing ways, that student's probably going to be on our radar. They might be acting out in class. They might be engaging in behaviors that teachers and school staff notice. And so those teachers and school staff are reaching out to the administrators. They're reaching out to the student services folks about those students. They're on our radar. But if we have a student whose mental health challenges manifest more internally and through internalizing behaviors like withdrawing or zoning out in class, it might take longer for that student to be on our radar. And so using some type of mental health or social emotional screener can help us to make sure that we're identifying students no matter how their mental health challenges are manifesting. So one tool for this that's an education tool to help folks learn a little bit more about this is we do have a module series related to school mental health referral pathways, and it features interviews and stories from folks across Wisconsin who have engaged in this process. So if, again, you're like, this sounds intriguing, I'm not quite sure where to start or what this might look like for my school district, this is a great place to start to check out some examples from other districts. All right, next we have sustainability as our fifth component. So lots of times when we think about sustainability, we think about financial sustainability. We think about the money to continue this work. And we know that that's absolutely important. And that's why it's so important that grant sources like the Stronger Connections grant exist. But when we talk about sustainability, we're not just talking about funding. We are also talking about other factors that contribute to this work being long lasting. So one of those things is staff retention. We know that a common challenge for schools across our state and really across our nation right now is staff turnover. And we know, again, that speaks to the importance of collaboration. If there's just one or two people leading this work and then that person leaves the district, oftentimes that work leaves with them. And there's a big rebuilding phase. So again, that speaks to the importance of a team approach with this work. When we talk about sustainability, that also includes staff wellness and compassion resilience that goes just beyond advocating for self-care, that really involves building systems that support educator wellness. It involves data tracking. Sustainability also involves making sure that school mental health is incorporated into district goals and policies and procedures, that it's not just a standalone initiative, that it's really incorporated into the fabric of the school. All right, so a couple of tools related to that. One of my favorite tools and closely related to work that Kristen and others do on our team is the Compassion Resilience Toolkit. And if you are not familiar with the Compassion Resilience Toolkit, it is a partnership between DPI, the Wish Center, Rogers Behavioral Health, their WISE End Stigma Initiative. And what it is it is a toolkit that focuses on building systems that support staff wellness, both through promoting self-care and healthy boundary setting, and through the creation of systems that support staff wellness. And really enhancing staff collaboration, staff discussion, staff support of one another. We know that it is harder than ever to be an educator. We know from data across our state and nation that educators are facing burnout and compassion fatigue at really high rates. So while this toolkit certainly isn't a cure-all and isn't the sole answer for that, it has some really fantastic activities and staff connection work that can help to build staff compassion resilience. Another great resource that I would really strongly recommend, and Eric, if you wouldn't mind clicking on the School Mental Health Works podcast. This is a podcast that is put out by the Coalition for Expanding School Mental Health in Wisconsin. And you can see they have 17 episodes. The episodes are available here on their website or also on Spotify and other major platforms. So for me, this is something I often listen to when I'm walking my dog. They have episodes that touch on all of the different components of school mental health, and they have a few specifically that relate to funding and sustainability. So they have an episode that's about philanthropy and school-based mental health. So how to partner with local community organizations that may be able to contribute to school mental health funding. They have an episode about compassion resilience. They have an episode about funding and blending and braiding different funding sources for school mental health. So a variety of great episodes, and all of them feature, again, this is Wisconsin based, so they feature educators and community providers and school leaders here in Wisconsin who are doing work related to school mental health. So as you listen, there may be people there could be people featured on this call today that have been in episodes, or people from your communities or nearby areas. So again, when people come to DPI and ask questions about school mental health, one of the biggest things that they're looking for is, what are examples of schools who have done this? Who can I talk to that's engaged in this work? So again, this podcast is all folks here in Wisconsin who are doing this work. So some great local examples. All right, and then finally we get to data. So data is a really important part of our school mental health system because it helps us to assess both the quality and functioning of that system. So when we talk about data, it's important to remember that we're not talking just about quantitative data. Qualitative data can be a really important piece of information for us too. And it's also really important that we disaggregate data as we move through school improvement efforts and work to build our school mental health system, so we can figure out how our system is impacting certain groups of students or families and changes we might need to make related to our system to improve outcomes for all of our students and take that equity lens. So one tool related to gathering data about our school mental health system that I truly cannot recommend enough if you haven't already used it is the school mental health quality assessment through the SHAPE system. So this is an assessment for school mental health systems created by the National Center for School Mental Health. It is completely free. You do have to create a login to access it, but there is no cost. And this is an assessment. It's not an individual student assessment. So it's not a screener or diagnostic tool for individual students. It is an assessment of your school mental health system as a whole. And it helps schools to assess how their system is doing in all of the different domains that we just talked about. So some of the naming conventions are a little bit different from the National Center for School Mental Health versus our Wisconsin School Mental Health Framework, but they all align really nicely. And this is a great tool for focusing and helping to figure out what's going really well in your school mental health system and what are some areas for improvement. So if you are on your school mental health journey and you haven't used this tool yet, I truly can't recommend it enough, because not only does it provide you with the results of the assessment, it provides you with information that helps you to move forward. So let's say, for example, that you identify that one area for improvement in your school mental health system is related to your mental health referral pathways. It doesn't just give you that score, it provides you with information and quality guides about each of these components of school mental health. I will say that oftentimes when teams do it, don't be discouraged if you have several scores that are in the red or yellow range. I tell teams not to worry about that, but instead just look at it as some baseline data to figure out some areas that you want to focus on. So again, you really can't recommend this tool enough. It does take about 2 hours to do, and it can be done as a team, all together in a group. Or if it's difficult for you to get your team all together for 2 hours at a time, you can also have the individual people that are on your school mental health team complete the assessment, and then the system will aggregate the scores for you. And it also saves your scores over time so you can see progress in those different areas. All right, so next I linked all of these resources that we talked about today in the presentation for ease of finding and locating them. But I do just want to do a quick tour of our website, because if you've ever tried to navigate it before, you know it can be a little bit challenging to navigate. So one of the things that I'll recommend for locating any resource on the DPI website is using the search feature at the top. Honestly, even as someone who works at DPI, the search feature, if I don't know quite where something is that I'm looking for, it's going to be your quickest way to get to something. But you can see that in our menu over on the left-hand side, we have our student services prevention webpage, and then we have our school mental health. And so you can see then that there's tabs there within. There's the school mental health framework, which has the framework document that we talked about today. It also has our roadmap for school mental health improvement. And Eric, would you mind clicking on that roadmap for school mental health improvement page? This is one that I really want to showcase. So this is a new resource that was released this spring. So we have our framework. We talked about the different components of that today. We also have our newly released roadmap for school mental health improvement, which moves through 5 steps of the school improvement process focused on school mental health. And Eric, if you want to just scroll down a little bit. There are tools built into this that if your district is focused on continuous improvement and using funding from your Stronger Connections grant or other funding sources to really work to improve that school mental health system, we have a lot of tools here. We have a fishbone tool that helps to do some root cause analysis, a driver diagram where schools can build their vision of school mental health improvement, develop that working theory of improvement. We have a tool for empathy interviews, which are a really great way to gather qualitative data and hear the voices of students and families and staff. So a variety of school improvement tools here. And then one other part of our school mental health website that we'll showcase is, Eric, if you want to scroll up a little bit, and then so under school mental health, click on trauma sensitive schools. Yep, perfect. Thank you. So our trauma sensitive schools webpage does live within our school mental health webpage as well. And so we have a variety of resources here on this main trauma sensitive schools page. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So on this main trauma sensitive schools page, we have some stories of trauma sensitive schools implementation. And then we also have our online PD system. So a module system that really explores all things related to trauma sensitive schools, really in depth. And so if as part of your school mental health journey, you're working to do some professional learning and professional development with staff related to trauma sensitive schools, there's lots of resources on this page as well. And you'll also see below that, you'll see some information about Get Kids Ahead initiative, federal and state school-based mental health programs, Project Aware. So lots of our state and federal funding related to school mental health. So this Student Services Prevention and Wellness page is kind of a good launching spot for all of these different things. If you are having trouble finding a resource, again, I encourage you to use the search bar, or please feel free to reach out to one of us. We are happy to send you direct links to help you to find these resources. We work really hard to make them and know that sometimes they're a little bit cumbersome to find on the website. So please reach out if there's anything we can do to help. And Eric, thank you for bringing this up too. This is also our team directory. And so a way to contact anyone on our team if you are not sure who to reach out to. You can always reach out to our team directors or office operations associates that are listed at the top of the list, and they'll help direct you to the right person. So we all specialize in different grants, different content areas related to school safety, student services, school mental health, and they'll help to connect you with the right person.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you, Libby. Last but not least, now that we've shared this information, we'd love to hear from you all on something that you may be taking with you today. So if you're feeling comfortable and you want to come off and use your mic, that's great. If not, just share in the chat something that may have resonated with you today, something you may have learned, or perhaps a tool that you learned about now and can use right away. And one thing that you may be wondering about. You don't have to do all three, just one of those. Either share in the chat or on your microphone.
In the chat, we have Melanie referencing the resource mapping checklist.
Yes, great tool.
Another resource mapping checklist. That Christine mentions how mental health does not sit on the with the student services staff alone.
Mm-hmm.
Great takeaway.
Tyler, I think you make a good point. There are definitely a lot of resources that even myself, when I was a school psychologist, there were a lot of things that I did not know. Even until coming now to DPI, I'm still learning a lot more about the resources and tools available. So I'd be interested to see if they've used it or are familiar with it.
We have embedding SEL into policies and procedures at the district level. Love the roadmap, lots of wonderful resources. Collaboration guide for schools and community mental health providers resource as well. And then looking deeper into sustainability and prioritizing staff wellness and retention to do this important work. And the equity cards, that is a great resource. That, again, like Kristen, that was something I hadn't seen prior to coming to DPI, and they're a great resource because they literally are just little cards that you can print off or use them digitally, and they're short, easy to use, but they get into some important discussion and topics and some good guidance there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and Morgan, I'll emphasize your point too, that another reason I love the equity cards is they feel really accessible. So sometimes if, especially like you said, like a small rural district, like just dipping their toes into this equity work, sometimes there can be pushback with that. Sometimes that can feel daunting. And so using those equity mindset cards and just saying like, okay, as we talk about this process, we're going to choose 2 reflection questions from the equity mindset cards to think about as we talk about this topic today, can be a way that feels a little bit less intimidating, and B, maybe a little bit less resistance to that if there's some resistance in the district. Awesome. Thank you.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. It was great to be here with you all today. We're going to stay on the call and just hear next from, I think, an LEA who is going to be doing a spotlight. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen and Libby. Thank you.
Yes.
And here's your contact information as well. Yeah, so we have Christine from Mukwonago is going to share a little bit about what they've been doing so far.
Hi, good morning. So I did not create any slides. You're just going to be stuck listening to me. So kind of want to just talk about our journey so far with the Stronger Connections grant. So when we originally wrote the grant, we had sort of a two-tiered potential interventions that we were hoping to do. The first one being at the elementary level based on our data that our students with disabilities and our students who had free and reduced lunch were having significantly higher playground referrals and incidents than other students. And so that was one thing that stood out. And then we've also been noticing a trend that our students with disabilities and our students who are free and reduced lunch often follow the same academic data as well. And so that just brings up a lot of questions about why, and just digging deeper into that. And then at the high school level, we have a high number of students who end up failing one or more of their core classes their freshman year. So what is it about that freshman year experience where we're missing students? And so when Eric mentioned like barriers, that is truth, 100%, right? So we wanted to hire somebody at the high school to build a kind of like a data tracking system and sort of like an at-risk coordinator, for lack of a better way to describe it. And we were unable to hire a candidate. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board to say, okay, so how can we reorganize our grant? And so at the elementary level, we decided to, part of our grant, all of our grant at the elementary level was based on an organization called Playworks. And Playworks is several schools in the state of Wisconsin use Playworks, but I had never heard of it before. Our principals had asked for it in the past, and we just couldn't afford it because it's not like pocket change, right? So like you have to make an investment, especially if we were going to bring it to all 6 schools. And so Playworks is really based on growing students, not only out on the playground to problem solve and to be inclusive, it also carries over into what I would say our teachers identify as a loss of instructional time when students are coming in 2 or 3 times a day with carryover issues from the playground. And so, and let me frame like the word inclusive. So, in what we were seeing in these particular cases is some of our students who maybe don't want to join a more competitive game because they're either always out or the rules are always sort of tailored to certain key players, or just like a reluctance to join. And some of our students who really need a strict, who can't think out of the box in that moment, but like need some structure and what that looks like. That's common for everybody. And so we brought Playworks in. We started our journey this summer. They came in and did trainings with all of our administrators Our counselors are taking the lead on it, our elementary counselors. We're very fortunate in Mukwonago to have a great pupil services staffing ratio. So we have so we have 6 schools. One is a charter school. And so we have a counselor there 3 full days a week for 100 students in an elementary charter school. And then we have 5 other elementary buildings that also have a full-time school psych and a full-time counselor. And so our counselors are taking the lead on PlayWorks. And so also part of that training then was all of our special education paraprofessionals and then all of our recess monitors. And so they came in, PlayWorks came in and talked about like what is their foundational learning. We actually also brought them in before the school year ended last June with staff, and then again did this training before school starts. The other key component is our Phy-Ed teachers have been heavily involved, and so we were able to merge PlayWorks along with our PBIS framework to really strengthen our Tier 1. And so the training was it was a lot of fun watching our administrators outside learning games and interacting with kids. Got some great footage, but just really fun to watch. And so we've had a lot of positive, like we have a lot of anecdotal data right now from parents and from students. So I'll just share 2 really brief ones. I have a student over at one of our elementary buildings who shared that for the first time, he was so happy to be able to play football, like flag football, because it actually, you knew who was going to be out and there was no arguing about that. And actually, when I say that, part of the grant too paid for all of the supplies for students to be able to engage in active play outside. And so we purchased new equipment for every single elementary school, also to help facilitate that learning. And then the other story I would share, oddly, I was getting my hair done the other night because this job makes it gray every 4 weeks. And my hairdresser happens to be a parent at one of our elementary schools. And she was like, oh my gosh, like my kid came home, like, and I heard my 2 kids talking in the other room, like they were kind of arguing. And then they decided to like solve their problem doing like a Rochambeau kind of game. And I was like, oh, rock, paper, scissors. And so that is one of the strategies they teach kids. Like instead of arguing and getting into it, we're going to solve our problem using rock, paper, scissors. And they call it Rochambeau. And so she went in there and the kids totally articulated that, like, Mom, at school, if we have a disagreement, this is how we solve it. And then she said, like, the whole family got engaged in playing rock, paper, scissors, like a tournament for a period of time. So just some cool carryover from what we're experiencing at school and that learning, and then taking that home with them. And so I've been hearing some really positive feedback. We will be doing our first data pull on our majors and minors shortly, now that we're a good month into school. And so I'm curious to see what that information will look like. And then also just developing a very informal survey for our staff, just to see like if they're seeing carryover in the classroom, if they are in fact feeling like they are spending a lot less time engaging in those carryover conflict that finds itself into the classroom after unstructured playtime. And then also just really getting in touch with our Phy-Ed teachers who are partnering with PlayWorks, and they're teaching the same games that PlayWorks is teaching. And then they're doing that in Phy-Ed, and the kids are carrying that out to the recess. And so that has been cool. Some barriers, just to be transparent, that I didn't anticipate is just like any district, we have some traditional thinking, right? And so playground is meant in some ways to, in some people's mind, like it's sort of a free for all. Kids can go outside, do whatever they want. And there is a degree to that for sure. And we haven't put structure on having traditional play or free time. And we're also putting some things in place where kids have some choices and structure. And so, didn't anticipate some of that pushback. And then also so again, that would kind of go with just that buy-in from staff, like didn't anticipate some of that pushback. But that's okay. Like we're working through it. It's a slow roll for us. So we will do a full implementation this year. And when I talk about implementation, what that means is that we have a coach who comes from Playworks for 1 full week a month into our schools. And so it's not as if they give you the information and then they're out of there. Like they are invested in our school. They've hired a full-time person and a half person from their organization to be our coaches. And so they work with our counselors. They hold recess team meetings. They help facilitate structured recesses where kids are learning. And then in addition to that, a cool component of Playworks is creating junior coaches. And so we have our 5th and 6th grade students who applied for junior coaches, and then they learn, they're able to take a lead with our younger kids outside. And so they help to facilitate games. They partner. I don't know, there's just a lot of like cross learning that has been positive. One barrier I didn't anticipate is that our recess times are also times when kids might take band or orchestra or some of those additional things at the elementary level. And so there's a lot of competition between where's the student going to be if they're in like 3 things at that time. And so having to think a little bit about that and re-image what that could look like or what those choices look like. But so far it has been 6 weeks in, right? Like a good experience. Still have some roadblocks to work through, no doubt. But I'm thankful for the opportunity to bring in something that we haven't been able to bring in before. And so the grant has really allowed us to take that step forward. So when we had to pivot and then take the grant money and stretch it just for our elementary schools, we were able to do so and work easily with Eric and his team to make that shift. And really, now looking back, like it's a good shift for us because we will be able to implement for 2 full years with complete fidelity, working with Playworks. So that is our journey so far. And if anybody has any questions or want to talk anything more about it, I'm certainly open to that.
Thank you, Christine, for sharing. Some things I pulled off of that. One, you talked about tier 1 universal, right? How important it is that you have that tier 1 foundation for teaching whatever it is, to get that success. That fidelity piece that you mentioned is really important. And then, that support staff that you're including them, I think is so critical because I know in my time as a teacher, excuse me, or as a principal, right, they weren't always included in the trainings, and they're the people that are sometimes on the front lines of some of those things. So anybody have any questions for Christine?
The only other thing I would add when you bring up support staff, Eric, is that all of the training, like we have youth mental health first aid responders that have been trained through a variety of grants that have come out of DPI. We have opened those trainings up to like any of our immediate touch points with kids. So our bus drivers, our seniors on the go drivers, our office staff, our health room, any people who maybe typically wouldn't fall on a PD day, but certainly important to have some of that background knowledge for kids. So I would encourage, that has been a big benefit for us. I would encourage anybody, if they have the ability, to open that up.
That's a great point. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. So the next section here is just kind of an open time. And again, I apologize. I may stop and cough for a little bit, but and I used to be a social studies teacher, so I had to throw the Roman Forum in there, which I got to visit one time. It was pretty impressive. Thoughts, questions about things that Christine has shared, things that Libby and Kristen have shared, or just other questions around the grant. Any resources that you've found so far that you feel would be beneficial, feel free to pop those in the chat and share about those as well. Just open time. Again, I want to make this valuable. So if there's nothing to share and we end a little early, then that's great, and you get a little extra time back in your day. So. The great thing I'll share quick too on the grant. The great thing about this grant, so I'll get ahead of questions that may come up right away. One, this was a one-time fund based on a legislative act in 2022. At this point, there is no renewal of the legislation. There's no funding that we know of coming down. In meetings that I'm at in the national level, there is a lot of interest coming from Congress on how the grant has been implemented. It was all 50 states received an award. And so, there's hope, as with any federal funding, there's hope that maybe it does get extended. But at this point, there isn't anything set in motion. But the cool thing about this grant and the way that it was set up is that it's very broad and allows the districts to really do things that work, right? So Christine, you're talking about recess, and as I was an elementary principal for a couple of years, the amount of time that I spent dealing with things after recess outweighed a lot of different areas in my school day and could totally derail the day, right? Because of things that happened. And so teaching those coping skills and the being able to overcome conflict and manage conflict themselves is huge. And we have districts that are putting money towards mental health, direct services from counseling, or support staff within student services, or restorative practice training, right? There's just so many great things that every district gets to really mold this into. So hopefully, as we go through the grant, my job is to try to tell those stories, and I'll be reaching out to people and looking for ways for you to tell your story so that we can publicize that, to get that message to our state legislation and our legislators and the federal legislators as well, around that this is funding that was needed, necessary, and is making a difference. So anybody have anything that they want to share, resources you found, thoughts, questions out there, feel free to come off mute or share in the chat. I see Morgan just put in the chat that you're starting the process of getting SBIRT started within the district. And so excited to see wonderful things. Anything you want to share about that, Morgan, if you're comfortable coming off mute? Put you on the spot there, I'm sorry. So you mentioned, oh, yep, go ahead. Oh, no, I can't hear you. We heard you for a long, I know. I'm not able to hear you. I'm sorry. No. You had great information. I apologize. It's a Teams, must be a Teams thing. It worked for a little bit there. I'm sorry. We are going to have, so at the end here, I'll show you that we are going to have 2 more this year. So chronic absenteeism is on our list of topics. So we'll have some resource sharing around school safety and chronic absenteeism in January. And you can, hopefully pick up a few things, a few resources around that. And then we'll be back in April for SEL. And so Rachel mentions that they hired a part-time SEL coach who's helping teachers for either student issues or students or staff self-care. So far, teachers have been very receptive, which is great to hear. Just kind of as I mentioned, so we're looking at 2 more. January 15th is a Wednesday. And so it's school safety and absenteeism. And then on Tuesday, April 15th, we'll be back for social emotional learning. And so, and Libby, your comment there is great too. And that staff wellness is so important. Compassion, resilience training is available through the WISH Center, which is a partner of DPI, ran through one of our CESAs. And so there is some things that you can do there to look into. Fairly inexpensive in some of the work that they do in terms of trainings that you're going to look at, but then the Compassion Resilience Toolkit is available with no charge, and as with all of our DPI resources out there. So there's some really important stuff around that staff wellness. I think we have to make sure we don't lose sight of that, because we focus so much on student wellness, as we should, but we can't lose sight of the staff wellness as well. Final call. Anybody have anything they want to share? Resources that you found? Well, I appreciate your time. I hope that this has been beneficial. I hope that you picked something up today that has been beneficial for you. Moving forward, we'll have 2 more for the rest of the school year. I'm going to provide a feedback tool in a minute for you to share your thoughts, so that way we can improve these moving forward. I do host an office hours specifically for the grant. Tuesdays, 9 a.m. November and December, and then I'm going to move it just to see, kind of match people's calendars as best I can. So in 2025, starting in January, I'm going to go to Wednesdays at 10 a.m. to see if that just kind of helps. It's hard to find time for people, but feel free to hop on there. It's just open session. There's no agenda. There's no set discussion topics. It's just I'm there to answer questions, help you with WISE grants, help you with allowability questions, anything that you have on your plates. So the slides are in the chat, and I'm going to send this out to everybody as well, but there is an exit ticket here. I'm going to pop this in the chat really quick as well. There is an exit ticket that I would love to have people take if you have a moment, and it's just to give us some feedback on how it went and hopefully improve our process as we move forward. So I appreciate your time. If you have questions, feel free to reach out through that email, schedule me in a bookings call, fill out the exit ticket if you have a moment, please. And I appreciate your time, and hopefully, you got an extra half an hour back in your schedule, and maybe you can get a few minutes to take care of some of that paperwork that's always sitting there. Thank you. Have a great day.